For centuries, human beings have been obsessed with understanding the actions of mankind's most disturbed individuals, with many psychologists dedicating their lives to the study of the twisted mind. One of the most valuable tools available to them is the simple act of talking. Here are some of the most shocking and revealing interviews ever conducted with killers. 13. Charles Manson.
Is Charlie Manson crazy?
Well, whatever that means. Sure, he's crazy as mad as a hatter. What difference does it make?
Charles Manson not only killed people, but also inspired others to kill after he started a cult in the late 1960s. His unhinged behavior and appearance fascinated viewers. In a 1987 interview with author Heidi Schulman, Manson's insane persona was evident as he straightforwardly acknowledged his killings, but refused to feel guilty about them. The interview contains sections of soft-spoken thoughts, incoherent ramblings, and occasional violent outbursts.
You know, if I wanted to kill somebody, I'd take this book and beat you to death with it.
12. John Wayne Gacy. Between 1972 and 1978, John Wayne Gacy raped, tortured, and murdered at least 33 young men and boys in a park in Chicago. He carried out several interviews after his capture, during which he often discussed his frustration with being described as a serial killer and his anger towards child abuse. He also claimed in one interview to have no recollection of his crimes.
I have no recollection of any of them. Never met them. They're just names and faces.
Possibly the most infamous interview moment came when Gacy demonstrated his rope trick with a shoelace while explaining the methodology of his crimes.
All you do is you wrap it around, you put one knot in it, and I said, then you put a second knot in it, okay? I said, then you take a stick and stick it in here, and you just turn this, and I said, it causes a tourniquet.
11. Issei Sagawa. In 1981, Japanese student Issei Sagawa invited a fellow classmate to his home in Paris to study, where he shot her in the back of the head, sexually defiled her corpse, and ate much of her body over the following days.
中で書いていて、まずお尻を一番美味しそうだと思ったんです。それも左じゃなくて右の膨らみ、左は心臓に近いから、血が怖いから。
Despite his horrific crime, Sagawa was released by French authorities due to a legal loophole and later became something of a celebrity in Japan until his death in 2022. His matter-of-fact description of his twisted crime still haunts people to this day.
多分もう一晩でも食事をルネとしていたら食べる対象には考えたことはない。
10. Elizabeth Wettlaufer. Elizabeth Wettlaufer was a certified Canadian nurse from southwestern Ontario who committed a series of murders from 2007 to 2016, using her position to kill patients with heavy insulin doses. She confessed to her crimes in 2016 by going to a psychiatric hospital where she explained that an external source had forced her to carry out the crimes. Wettlaufer was sentenced to 8 concurrent life sentences with no chance of parole for 25 years. Part of me had started to believe that it was the devil, and part of me thought it might be God. 9. David Berkowitz. David Berkowitz, aka Son of Sam, was a serial killer who mercilessly murdered 6 individuals in New York City from 1976 to 1977. His victims were primarily young women with long brown hair, with his nickname arising from signed notes he would leave next to the bodies of his victims. In an interview, Berkowitz confessed that he'd been involved in Satanism and how it led him to carry out his horrific crimes. 8. Ted Bundy.
If someone's crazy enough and nutty enough to do something like that, I can't stop them.
One of the most popular serial killers in the history of America, Ted Bundy kept denying all his crimes for over a decade before finally admitting to them. His cold and mysterious persona during all of his interviews made him look like a frightening psychopath. In a jailhouse interview conducted by KUTV News, Bundy was seen smiling a lot and calmly looking into the eyes of the interviewer as he continued to deny his killings.
I didn't show any emotion because, what am I supposed to do?
His relaxed body language and intimidating style were enough to leave the viewers disturbed. 7. Andrei Chikatilo. Andrei Chikatilo, aka the Butcher of Rostov, was a Soviet serial killer who was convicted in October 1992 for murdering and sexually assaulting 56 women and children. Before he was executed in February 1994, in an interview, he said, "No, I have never thought about that. Never. I feel like it doesn't bother me. I have never thought about it. I have already passed rounds of hell in my life. I am already ready to pass away to the other world again." 6. Edmund Kemper.
That I was losing a grasp on something that was too violent to keep inside forever.
Unlike the killers who kept claiming innocence, Kemper always openly boasted about his crimes, and his straightforward style was something that made him frightening. In most of his interviews, he appeared to be absolutely emotionless, however. His well-spoken nature and impressive intellect made his personality quite intimidating.
As I'm sitting there with a severed head in my hand, talking to it, or looking at it, and I'm about to go crazy, literally. I'm about to go completely flywheel loose and just fall apart.
In the 1981 documentary, The Killing of America, Kemper described the details of his brutal crimes in a matter-of-fact way that left the audience unmoved.
Unable to live with the fact that I just stabbed to death and cut the throat of an innocent young woman.
5. Richard Ramirez, popularly known as the Night Stalker. Richard Ramirez is one of the most infamous killers of all time. He fascinated the public not only because of his brutal crimes, but also because of his disturbing aura.
We are all evil in some form or another, are we not?
Often skirting around the descriptions of his crimes, Ramirez instead called society and the government the true criminals, as well as discussing his belief in Satan.
As far as Satan is concerned, I believe in a malevolent being. His description eludes me, but I have felt powers that are evil.
4. Jeffrey Dahmer, often referred to as the Milwaukee Monster. Jeffrey Dahmer was convicted for brutally killing and dismembering 17 men between 1978 and 1991. But despite committing these horrendous killings, Dahmer's attitude in his interviews was often soft-spoken and calm.
I was saving body parts such as skulls and skeletons, and eventually I did turn to cannibalism.
In one of his famous interviews with the interviewer Stone Phillips, Dahmer claimed that his only motive was to gain complete control of a person to whom he was sexually attracted. However, despite showing remorse for his crimes, Dahmer admitted to still fantasizing about killing people.
There are times when I still do have the old compulsions.
3. Gary Ridgeway. With a kill count of over 45, Gary Ridgeway is one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. The killer's interviews were almost as shocking as his crimes, where he talked about topics such as his murderous desires and sexual attraction towards his own mother.
I'd see her out sunbathing, and I feel that she'd be good to have sex with.
One such interview was conducted by FBI psychopathy profiler Mary Ellen, in which he described all his crimes in detail without showing much emotion. Ridgeway's cold attitude in describing his brutal killings made this interview quite uncomfortable to watch.
Wanted to have her stop, and the only way was to kill her, to hurt her bad.
2. Otis Toole. Otis Toole was an infamous serial killer, known not only for his crimes, but also for his crazy behavior and explicit description of his crimes during interviews. In one such interview, he went a little extra creepy as he openly fantasized about burning down a whole city. The grainy interview footage only seems to add to the hysterical vibe left by Toole.
I like to see a whole city burned down.
What do you feel when you see it? What do you feel?
1. Aileen Wuornos. Aileen Wuornos is often regarded as one of America's most infamous female serial killers. Her interviews were often filled with emotion and anger, where she blamed others for her actions and called herself a victim.
You're an inhumane bunch of living bastards and bitches, and you're gonna get your asses nuked in the end, and pretty soon it's coming.
Immediately before her execution, however, Wuornos gave one more interview in which she took some accountability for her actions.
I gotta come clean that I killed those 7 men in first-degree murder and robbery. As they said, they had it right. A serial killer.
Thanks for watching today's video. Be sure to like and subscribe for more.